Hello, it's Lion here with Hobbies and Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another light novel review. Today we're going to be looking at Soul Leveling number 6, written by Chugong, published by Yen Press under the Yenon imprint, I guess, is what it's called. The demographic for this is 16 plus, and I've always said that this is basically an adult novel, an adult fantasy novel, but it can more or less act like as a YA title because there really isn't anything too egregious here. It's kind of similar to a Brandon Sanderson work, or at least more of his earlier ones, where yes, technically the characters were all adults, but the story wasn't really so adult-like. Like, it didn't really have sexual content or very deeply messed up things in it, like a grimdark story. So it was accessible for teenagers, and I think that this really falls into that. The main character is a proper adult. He's like 20 something, but the vast majority of what happens is really mostly just fun action stuff. So it is more or less a shonen kind of type story. So I do think that it works for anyone, but the labeling on this does say 16 and up, so be aware of that. Genre-wise, this is an action fantasy. It's a gamelet. It's a lit RPG, which are this kind of subgroup of this thing called progression fantasy, which means you follow a character as they develop their skills or powers or whatever in a very rote way, kind of very similar to grinding in a video game, which is where gamelet and lit RPG kind of aspects come in. And specifically, they refer to having a video game type system integrated into your story. And in Soul Leveling, that happens through the fact that he has a skill that lets him level up in a very video game-esque way, right? So it is what it is. There you go. That's how I came about saying that that's the genre for this. Adaptations-wise, it does have a manga, and it is going to have an anime sometime this year, I think. But I am not going to watch that anime because it is based on the Japanese version of Soul Leveling, which is not the original. And it's actually changed because the Japanese are actually one of the early villains in the story. Japan obviously doesn't want to portray it that way. So they changed the story up as far as I understand it. And the anime is going to follow the Japanese version of the story, which is not the true version. So I'm probably not going to watch it, although I might watch some scenes here and there just because the fight scenes are still kind of probably be the same for the vast majority of the time. And the rating for this novel is 5 out of 5. Similar to the last one, I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was really great. I have enjoyed every Soul Leveling novel that I've read, but the last two I think are probably the best ones that I've read so far, mostly because the world is expanding so much and the characters are finally learning a lot about the lore of the story, and primarily lore is what I like about novels, right? So there you go. Premise-wise, basically Jinwoo is ready to head to Japan because at the end of last book, Japan basically had a dungeon break happen and 30 giants stepped out of this place and started wreaking havoc on all of Japan. And because they're giants and Japan had just recently lost a lot of high-level hunters, they really couldn't deal with the situations going on. And because President Gunhee Go had told the world that Japan actually had tried to sabotage the operation on Jeju Island. I don't know how to say it. Basically, no one wants to help Japan, so Japan is left alone, and they have to deal with the situation, right? But Jinwoo is like, this is perfect training for me, so he heads over there, and then he has to deal with the fallout of, dealing with all of these giants, because obviously he would be able to. And then there is an international hunters gathering in America, so they had to travel to the U.S. And then there's a big fight, and a big lot of lore unfolds throughout this novel, and that's basically the premise here. It's all about developing the future of what's coming up. This is more or less a transitionary novel, but it still has enough action and interesting stuff going on there to really cement that this is a really fun kind of volume in the series, right? So, yeah. Also, I do think at this point we are basically halfway through the series. I think the series had 13 novels, and it actually has an equal or almost equal amount of number of comic books associated to it. So we're about the halfway mark here, which is pretty interesting. I'm curious to see how it goes from here. And Volume 7 should come out sometime in April, I think. So that's awesome. So let's look at the plot line here. So, like I mentioned, Jinwoo heads to Japan to deal with the giants there. And of course, because he has so many shadows and they're so strong at this point, well, he's able to dispatch all of the giants pretty easily. Actually, he only gets to kill 29 of them because one of them actually moved on to China. It crossed the ocean and moved to China for some reason. I'm not really sure why. It just kind of was a way to introduce this other hunter from China. Whose name is Shango or something like that. I honestly don't remember exactly, but yeah, so he kills 29 giants. Mostly they're killed by the ant soldiers that he has from Jeju Island. And actually, he ends up meeting a dungeon boss, a very specific one, who happens to actually be the King of Giants. And he also has a secondary title associated to him, which is very similar to his Shadow Monarch title for Jinwoo, right? So he kills this giant, and he can't turn it into a Shadow Warrior because this thing apparently has an astral body. It's something different from the standard Chaos monsters, which is basically everything that they've been fighting with. So he's some sort of higher being, right? Like the one from book 5, the angel with wings character. And he kills it, of course, and it gives him a huge amount of XP. He gets like 8 levels out of it, which is awesome. That's a lot of levels for Jinwoo at this point. And then we move on to a secondary plot point here, where apparently at some point in book 5, we mentioned that Jinho's dad, Manga, I think is his name, has the sleep disease, right? The endless sleep disease that Jinwoo's mother had. And so Jinwoo actually ends up, providing him the thing he needs because Jinho actually is very deeply negatively affected by this situation, right? So he wants to protect his buddy, who he calls his little brother. So he wants to do what's best for him, but he can't do it in a way that gets him recognition. So he does it in a very sneaky way. And of course, everyone that was in the know, specifically, Jinho's dad, knows what happened, but he can't really prove it. So he kind of just lets it be for a while. Then we move on to traveling to America here. And it's actually very cool. There's basically an international hunters gathering. I think it had a specific name, but I don't really remember it. Because it was just like not that important. What it was called doesn't matter. It's just what happens there that is important, right? So Jinho manages to get to America, and he's met by Adam White, which is the one of the Hunters Command Center workers. He doesn't have any powers, but he is a very good worker, and he meets up with Jinwoo, and he's like, hey man, the people at the command center want to talk to you. Can we go there? And they're willing to offer you whatever you want for you to become an American hunter, right? And Jinwoo doesn't really care, but he eventually sees that they have the body of this dragon, Kashim, and he's like, if that's still, well off, I might be able to absorb the shadow from it, and it would give him a huge boost of power, right? So they go there, he tries to do it, it doesn't work, and he actually gets a lot of information out of this, which is really, really cool. And then as he's, in this place, Dong-Soo Huang, or Huang Dong-Soo, actually tries to, get revenge, but he can't find Jinwoo, so he kidnaps Jinho. And this causes, of course, a big problem because he is hurting Jinwoo's family, basically. And we know how it went when Jina was affected. So, of course, shit gets serious, and Huang dies because Jinwoo kills him. But this actually unleashes a kind of like a guild war, essentially. So, Jinwoo is the Ajin Guild. He's the only member of the Ajin Guild, but he has like 1,000 shadows, right? So he's able to take on the Scavengers Guild, which Huang Dong-Soo was part of. And he actually ends up taking down Thomas Andre, who is the top-ranked hunter in the U.S. He's an S-level hunter the same way that Jinwoo is. And actually, I think he's a national-level hunter. So he is actually even higher up on the ranking scale than Jinwoo is. And Jinwoo battles him, and of course we know what happens, which is that he beats him. And of course this causes a lot of stress on everyone because Jinwoo is just so freaking powerful compared to everyone else, and it's really, really cool. Then we actually end up getting to the meeting. They're all at the center, they're all interacting with each other, and they basically get a mission briefing. Apparently there is these crazy non-human things that look like humans that are monsters from inside the gates, in the Americas and in the world, hunting down very strong, powerful hunters, and one of them happens to look like Jinwoo's dad. And of course, this causes an issue. And then people ask him, "Hey, man, if this is your dad, what are you gonna do? And if it's not, what are you gonna do?" Right? So he's like, "If it's not my dad, I'll kill him myself. And if it is, I will become the enemy of all hunters in order to protect them." So it's very cool. It's very interesting. I really like this. I think it's a really cool way to just show us that Jinwoo is really about his family, and everything he's ever done is for them. And it's really, really cool. I really enjoyed this. It was an awesome, badass moment. And it was really, really cool. So, yeah, then we move on. There's this hunter's party. And then finally, the last major thing that happens here is that a frost monarch appears. Now, this basically looks like an ice elf from book 2 or book 3. I don't remember. And, he murders someone. And then Jinwoo tries to fight him. But the guy is like, "No, I can't fight you right now. You're going to beat me. So I'm going to cheat and do some other shit." And he goes away, and then Jinwoo swears revenge on this guy, and the Frost Monarch actually swears revenge on Jinwoo as well. And so they end up in this kind of like mutually sworn revenge. And the very last scene of the book sets up the fact that the Frost Monarch is joining up with some other monarchs, which are other top level higher plane beings that are all trying to hunt down Jinwoo. And really, really cool stuff. I really enjoyed that. So, yeah, characters-wise, we get a little bit of development of Adam White. We get, finally, the conclusion of Huang Dong-su's situation. We get introduced to Thomas Andre and Laura, his secretary. And there really isn't too much going on there. We also get introduced to the Chinese S-rank hunter. And again, I thought he was pretty interesting. I actually like him, but I don't know if he's going to become a relevant character or he's just more like a way to expand the lore of the world, right? So, yeah, in terms of world building, we get introduced to rulers and monarchs. So these are two different opposing groups of higher level beings. The rulers, I think, are less. There's less of them. There's like 4. And I think they're related to the angel character. And then there's monarchs, and I think there's 9 of them. And Jinwoo has battled and killed 2 of them, I think. And he's one of them as well because he is a shadow monarch. But there's like a situation there that doesn't really make sense. Like there's a certain level of like humanity that Jinwoo retains that isn't, it doesn't match with everyone else that happens to have this title. And then there's the Frost Monarch, and there's a few other ones. And then we learn that there's one called the Monarch of Wild Dragons or something like that, which is really, really awesome. I'm very excited to see who that character ends up being. And there's this thing called luminosity, fragments of luminosity, and I'm guessing they're parts of the rulers, or they might be something else. I'm not really sure. And of course, we learned that all the monsters, all of the dungeons, come from this thing called chaos, which is a different plane of existence, basically. And then we get introduced to natural hunters, which are basically hunters that are so powerful they basically equate a country in terms of firepower. And of course, we basically learn that Jinwoo is basically at this level at this point, and he probably will end up higher up. And we learned that Kamish the Dragon was basically the first major incident that the U.S. ever suffered, and that they built their command center on top of him, which is kind of badass, actually. And of course, Thomas Andre is related to this incident because he might have, maybe it was him, or maybe it was another character that was also a national level hunter. I don't remember, but basically, one of them survived this encounter, and of course, they ended up being crazy because of it. So, really interesting. So, that's it. There's no fan service. There's no artwork here. So, ratings-wise, it's a 5 out of 5. It's so good. So enjoyable. I just really loved it. I thought it was great. So, there you go. That's it for Solo Leveling number 6. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below to me your thought. And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.